nervous because I'm here now.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and our friend of the show, Tony Thornton, of course. Really excited to have you on. Thanks for coming on, Tony.
Thank you, Jimmy and Glenn. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, and I love that you called me Jimmy. That's so awesome.
Wow, you don't like Jimmy?
I feel so comfortable now with you guys. So, Jimmy, hopefully you're okay with that.
Oh, absolutely. Glenn, yeah, that doesn't bother me at all. We're really excited to have you on. Thank you. And as you guys know, Tony, of course, is one of our Patreons, and he's already been on the show. We're really excited about it to have him on again. But any of you guys that are interested in interacting with us in the same way, feel free to check out the Patreon in the link below. And go ahead and look at our options. Also, before we dig into this preview, which we're really excited to do, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so you stay up to date as the game gets closer. But without any further ado, we're going to kick this off. And, of course, this is our Ravens-Chiefs. I was going to say Chiefs-Ravens, but I don't like that. I like Ravens-Chiefs.
There we go.
Preview game, Monday Night Football. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with some stats, some team stats. Then later on we'll get into some player-specific stuff. But, Glenn, why don't you kick us off here and start with the Ravens team stats, where we lie, and then we'll talk about what we're up against.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so 2-0 Ravens taking on the 2-0 Chiefs. So on the Ravens side, the offense ranks 12th in the league, defense second in the league. So right now, two pretty good units here. I think we kind of thought before the year maybe those two would be flipped and we'd see the offense second, maybe defense 12th. But, yeah, nice to see early on defense showing out. And, so I'm pretty impressed. Now, on the Chiefs side, with 13th rated offense, 27th rated defense. So you can see that they have more of a gap between the two. They're clearly a team that's driven by their offense. But yeah, they got some players on defense too. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm sure, Tony, you don't mind that both of our ratings are higher than both of theirs as far as, team stats go, where we're 12-2 and they're 13-27. I'm sure you're not too upset about that, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting stat. I'm not upset at all. It's an interesting stat, especially on the defensive side on their end, because they have some defensive stars that we all know. So absolutely, it's a big surprise. But that unit is good as a whole. So we're going to be up against a pretty good team.
Absolutely. So what isn't a surprise, of course, is that right now we are 4th in rushing. I will say, though, that they're 8th in rushing, and that's pretty interesting to me based on the fact that Andy Reid is so hot and cold with it. There's no consistency. I feel like Andy Reid wakes up one day and he's like, we're going to run the ball today. And tomorrow he's like, no, we're not. He's just this back and forth and back and forth. But they're 18th in passing where we're 24th. A lot of that comes from the fact that, we have such a powerful rushing attack. But Lamar has some great stats, as far as efficiency goes, and we'll get into that later. But, Tony, what I want to do here is have you kind of talk about the Ravens' health. There's some players coming back and then some players that we're a little concerned about. So why don't you dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, Ronnie Stanley, certainly our left tackle, he had some hip and ankle types of issues, but he said he's going to play, and I expect him to be at full throttle on Monday night. Matabuki practice this week. I don't think he's going to be ready for this game because he still needs to be brought up to speed, but at least he's practicing now, and, the young rookie's still trying to get his feet wet. Chris Moore, he practiced. Good to see him finally to do, because his special teams is going to be needed in this particular game. And, of course, Tavon Young, unfortunately, the season-ending situation for him, he will be missed. But I feel very bad for this young man. Really, he's had 3 full seasons of really not playing under his contract now. So we wish him well, but he's definitely going to be missed in this particular game.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I don't know how you can hurt a finger, referring to Chris Moore, when you have phone books for hands. Right, Glenn?
Stop it.
Oh, my goodness.
How can you, right? I've always wondered that. When you got these big old phone books, how do you hurt a finger? Anyway, as far as the Chiefs go, of course, Mike Pennell is coming off a 2-game suspension, and he's a full practice participant. Travarius Ward has a hand issue. He's looking like he'll play. Sammy Watkins, I think that's the name that most people are looking at, along with Pennell, but Watkins, as far as from the offensive standpoint goes, he's in concussion protocol. I just conflated those words. That was awesome. So anyway, he's in concussion protocol. Nothing is for sure, but it's looking like usually the foggier they are, coaches
He's
are.
not playing.
Yeah,
There's no way he's
exactly.
playing. They said that he said today that he thinks it's more of a neck issue than a concussion issue,
Oh,
although he is in the
jeez.
concussion protocol. So it's hard to say what's really going on with Sammy and when he'll be back, but I don't expect him in this one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't either. So now that we got health down, I think relatively speaking, we're a healthy team. Relatively speaking, they're a healthy team. So it's gonna be a heavyweight matchup. Really excited to dig into this some more. What we're gonna do now is get into our keys of the game or points of emphasis. We're gonna start on our defensive side of the ball. Glenn, I'm gonna let you here kick this off and talk into your first 1 or 2 points, and then we'll kick it over to Tony.
Yeah. So as we all know, Patrick Mahomes is arguably the best quarterback in the league right now.
Arguably.
And yes, I did say arguably. And he is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal talent. And although his arm gets all the accolades, he's got legs too that he can move, he can run, he's athletic. So to me, pressuring him up the middle with most quarterbacks is always the best way to go. Get him out of this, get him off his spot, get him moving. But to me, the most important thing is once you touch, you can't just get him moving. Once you touch him, you got to get him on the ground because he makes so many plays outside of the pocket. It's just as much as inside the pocket. I mean, he holds the ball. We just went from one quarterback in Watson that holds the ball for a long time to let his receivers uncover. This guy does a similar thing. So, yeah, get him off his spot, and when you get your hands on him, get him to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. Tony, what are some of your defensive keys to this game?
Well, defensive key certainly is to contain Travis Kelce, who I believe is probably the best route runner tight end wise in the league. This guy is sneaky good, and he's the best in the league for a reason. And I think really trying to contain him and keep him from being that ultimate weapon is critical at this point. Not sure who would be taking on that challenge. It could be LJ Fort, who I would prefer because of his veteran leadership and what he knows about Kelce and just his experience, I think would be helpful. Maybe Jimmy Smith, who to me is our most physical cornerback that we have. Someone to really give him a challenge off the ball, off the snap, and not let him run those routes as he does. And really that's where I'd like to see really us to really contain Kelce, because the wide receiver positions for Kansas City, I think we can handle them to a certain degree. It's going to be a challenge, but we can. But Kelce, to me, is that X factor.
Yeah, I tell you what, we talked about health, and Glenn, you mentioned this off air. This is going to be our first full game, of course, without Tavon Young. And it stinks that it's always bad, but it had to be the week before Chiefs week, where if you're talking about, it's always nice to, I feel like when you look at the other team's wide receiver core and even their tight ends, you can kind of say it's a wash because our secondary is so good. Mm-hmm. But this would be the game where, it's going to have the biggest impact having to slide Marlon in, play Averett more, and things like that. So I agree with you. I'm interested to see what we do to contain Kelce. But the other thing I want to talk about, too, is stopping Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We need to make him as one-dimensional as possible. We just finished talking about how prolific they're, how many threats they have, passing the ball. But making any team one-dimensional is important, and I think that stands with the Chiefs as well. And then along those lines, I think eliminating the big play. The reason I think that's important, and I want to talk about this specifically, is because they get a lot of. I remember back in the day, Michael Jordan said a dunk is more than 2 points, right? It gives you a tactical advantage over your opponent. There's a psychological swing when you dunk on somebody, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same way with these deep plays. I mean, you remember in the Super Bowl when they finally broke out and got that deep play to Ty Hill, the whole pendulum just swung. So those are my two big ones. You got any other ones, Glenn?
No, I think that is a good point, though. It is funny because I think as an offense, you may feel more gratifying to have a 10-play drive that chews up 12 minutes. But those one big chunk play scores can oftentimes be more devastating to the defense. But my last one is both teams extremely good at taking care of the football and turning over the other team. Both teams in the top 5 right now. Ravens lead is with a +4 ratio, where the Chiefs are at +2. So got to win the turnover ratio or turnover battle. When two teams are this good, when the margin is this close, you need to win the turnover battle. A lot of times it comes down to who wins that turnover battle ends up winning the game.
Man,
I think that's going. Yeah, I was going to say I think that's going to be something, and again, that's going to be a key for this game to me, because we are so good at trying to take the ball away. Marlon has become a specialist now in the punch out, which is something that is incredible. He's been doing that now for the last couple of years that we've seen that. And I think that they're going to try the same thing. The Chiefs are going to look to try to get us to turn the ball over, maybe make Lamar do things a little bit differently. And I think to your point, Glenn, is that we have to win that battle. If we turn the ball over 2 or more times in this game, that might be the tipping point, because it may be at an inopportune time when we definitely need to keep that ball going. So I agree with you 100% with the turnover, but I think we have a pretty good specialist on defense that can really kind of tip that scale for us.
Yeah,
and
Jimmy,
I think
you think he's motivated to play his old team?
That's what I was gonna say. I think it's fair to say we got 2 specialists, right? Because like you're saying, Tony, I mean, you got a guy that, I mean, I wouldn't want to see Marlon Humphrey in a ring, because he's obviously got a pretty accurate punch.
Good right
hand.
hand.
And it's pretty accurate. He knows where to land it. Definitely not learning from TJ Watt, because that guy just sucker punches people instead of trying to hit the ball out. But like you said, Tony, I mean, I think we really got 2 of them, because Glenn, you referenced Marcus Peters. And then I think Marlon goes in there when he's going to tackle, because, you know, he's stronger than a lot of these receivers. He's a very physically imposing corner when he comes in and lays the wood. And then based on the fact that he's punching it too, it's exciting. So I'm really excited about that as well. But what I want to do is I want to switch over now to the well, I don't want to say fun side of the ball, because that might be sacrilegious in Baltimore. That might be a bad idea.
That's right. You watch your tongue.
But,
yes.
But I'll say the electrifying side of the ball with Lamar Jackson under center. The offensive side of the ball. Let's get to our keys of the game there. Tony, I'll let you kick us off here and give us a couple of your points of emphasis for this game that our offense needs to do to come out with a victory.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I want to see, of course, is run the ball, and run the ball often and early. Really get it started. We didn't see that a lot in the last game against Houston. I felt that maybe Greg Roman was trying to save some things for this particular game, but we need to get back into that mode of thinking, because in the second half last week, we had some sustaining drives just by running the football and using Gus the Bus and utilizing the bus, exactly. Utilizing Ingram, especially that 4th down play, which was fantastic, because we are a good run blocking team. Pass blocking is a different story. We need to work on that a little bit. But again, run the ball early and often, and win the time of possession. That is a critical piece in this game, because as we discussed, really it could be the team that has the ball last wins the game. And we know the field goal kickers for both teams are pretty good, as we know. So again, win the time of possession and run the ball early and often. Those, to me, would be important keys to start.
Absolutely. What else you got for us, Glenn? It's some nuggets of knowledge out of the Glenn Martin headspace there.
Yeah. Well, I'll try my best. I think Mark Ingram has got to be a bigger part of this game.
Mark Andrews,
the other Mark, his son, as Mark Ingram likes to say.
His son, right? I love that.
That's right.
His namesake.
So Mark Andrews has got to make himself more a part of this game. He's got to be more productive than he was last game. Hunter Henry had 8 targets. He turned that into 6 receptions for 83 yards last week against the Chiefs. So they're obviously vulnerable over the middle. They got some good cornerbacks, but that connection between Lamar and Andrews is something special. And I think certainly when we talk later about the importance of finishing in the red zone, that's where he really becomes the biggest factor, because he's not just our biggest red zone threat through the air. He might be our only really true red zone threat through the air. So I think he's got to become he's got to be a focal point of our offense, and he's got to be somebody that the Chiefs have to deal with all afternoon or all night.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say this. I think that Mark Andrews is not only our best red zone threat, I think he is the best red zone threat in the air, of course, in the NFL. I'm saying it. You guys can pile on if you want.
Like it.
Well, I like it too. He has
everyone,
12 touchdowns in the last, year? I mean,
everyone talks about Kelsey and Kittle, but he doubled them both up last year.
He did. He really did. I think Andrews certainly is very underrated, but I think a lot of the people in the league know who he is now. And I think to your point, Glenn, you really got to feed him in the red zone, and that's where you finish those drives, and that's going to be important for the Ravens to finish drives. And I'm sure we'll talk about that soon in terms of what they need to do each and every drive and what their goal should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because 2 things I want to talk about here is, of course, keeping Lamar upright, where, we talked about this as we were prepping for the show. Sometimes Lamar will turn a terrible offensive line job, right? Like blown assignments and things into a +5 or a +10 or who knows. He'll take it to the house. But there are also uncharacteristically, there was a high amount of times that Lamar was getting hit in this game. In the previous game, in the Texans game. So that's something that we need to do a better job at. You got a guy like Chris Jones. You got a guy like Frank Clark. You know, as Glenn says, he's real speedy off the edge. And Chris Jones might be the second best defensive tackle in the NFL. I think he's definitely in that space. And so we need to do a really good job. I'm worried about Phillips this game, but keeping Lamar upright is super important. And the other thing that I think is really important is when we put our foot on their throat, we need to keep it there and not let them back in the game. Like, I think that is huge. Do not let them back in the game.
Yeah, how many games of the last 5 or so that we've seen the Chiefs, they're down every game, every one of them, and they just keep coming back, man. It's crazy. So if you get them down, keep them down.
Right, absolutely. Tony, I wanted you to mention you were talking about finishing drives. Why is that so important this week?
Well, it's important because certainly if you want to do anything with the Chiefs and their offense, you want to really make sure you stay you keep up. In other words, you can't convert. You have to convert in the red zone. So I want to see this team. If it's 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, you're going to see a lot of times where Roman may say, let's go for it, or Harps will say, let's go for it down near the goal line, because you want to get 7 in this drive. Listen, we love Tucker. We love to see him come out on the field. We know he's automatic. But in this particular game, you can't match field goals for touchdowns. You've got to be able to score 7 points every single time. That's critical in this game where you have a high-powered offense such as the Chiefs against us. So we have to be cognizant of that. And I can see us going for a lot of 4th and 2s, 4th and 1. It's going to be – I think those are automatic, where you know how the Ravens, when they – on offense, they normally look when it's 3rd down, it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9. They really know if we can get 5 or 6 here, we know we're going to go for it on 4th down. They've got to keep that. They've got to keep that going. So I want them to do that in the red zone.
I cannot wait. I can't wait to see Lamar telling Coach, leave him off, leave him off.
You want to go for it, Coach? Hell yeah, I want to go for it. That's my favorite.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So those are our offensive and defensive keys of the game. Now I want to kind of get into some narratives as far as this game goes. So one of the questions that we've been tossing back and forth, how important is this game for the Ravens later on down the road? So the reason I'm asking this is because I'm wanting to know, is there a psychological impact to the Ravens losing this game? Glenn, what do you think about that? Is that real, or is that something we shouldn't put any stock in?
Well, I think if you ask the players, they're all going to tell you it's nonsense. Each game stands on its own, and the previous game holds no weight on this game. But I find it hard to believe that if they were to lose this game and lose 3 straight, and really that's the only team that is shown that they cannot beat, I find it hard to believe that that's not going to have a psychological advantage for the Chiefs going into the playoffs if they meet. They can say all they want that it wouldn't matter, but if a team's beaten you 3 straight times, you haven't proven. You might know or think and even know in some parts of your mind that you can beat them, but you haven't done it yet. So I think absolutely, maybe not all their players, maybe not players with supreme confidence, but maybe there's those players that maybe their confidence is wavering a little bit, or maybe they're just not, feeling themselves too much. Maybe for those guys, it starts to creep into their brain. That's all it really takes.
Yeah, I feel the same, and I just in listening to some of the Ravens players all week with their pressers, of course, and I really get involved with those because I really want to get a sense of how they feel. This is a game that they're looking forward to, but the coach speak is, one game at a time. You have to win. You have to go 1-0 every single week. But if you listen to these players, they know this is a big game. They say we look at social media. We know how big this game is for the league, for the fans. We really want to beat the Chiefs. And even with Lamar today and listening to him speak, I just sensed that this game is important for him because he wants to right a wrong. He wants to get that revenge back from a loss that he hasn't, or from, he hasn't gotten any wins yet. He's 0-2. So he really wants this game. And I can tell that Lamar is going to be so pumped for this game. He's not concerned about the fans not being there. He's not concerned about the big lights of Monday night. He knows it's a big game, but he internalizes that and says, I've got to get this win, or else I don't know how, he'll be able to recover. But again, this is, I think, to your point, Glenn, just in the mindset, they want this game badly.
I thought it was funny, you bring up the pressers. Marcus Peters reminded everyone that it's only week 3. But look, we know how Marcus went off last year when we played the Rams, and he was hitting. I mean, look, Marcus is an incredible corner, not known for laying the wood. All right, he makes a couple business decisions, and I'm all right with that because we want him out on the field. But he was getting physical. He was getting mouthy with Jalen Ramsey. He was letting them know. And I think I'm excited to see this because I think he's going to feel the same. I mean, this team let him go just like the Rams did.
That's right.
And I think he's going to come out with a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder. But I want to talk.
Let me ask you one quick question, Jimmy. Also, how big could this game be with the new playoff format when you're talking about the fight for the number 1 overall seed?
Yeah, I think that is huge because, like you said, we have this new format. You only have one team with a bye. However, I wonder if John thinks about that and he's like, I kind of don't want to buy this year. I just don't want that question. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
But
he mentioned that today as well about that because he said, well, we didn't do so hot with that bye last year. And, so I think to your point, I think this is an important game to get that confidence for that number 1 seed. And they want that number 1 seed. Trust me, they would love to have it. But, this is the way to it. You beat the top team in the AFC, according to pundits, and this is the way to do it. And you're going to face them again at some point. So I think that it is that important. The players and coaches really know that. They may not share it with us, but they know what's important.
Yeah, and I think go ahead, Glenn.
Well, I was going to say, and as a season ticket holder, Tony, do you hold out any hope or any confidence that maybe by the time playoffs roll around, that if that game is in Baltimore, that there will be fans in the stands?
I hold out confidence for playoff games. Regular season, no, but for playoff games, because that will certainly put us into January. Perhaps there's some sort of a change in terms of the numbers that we're going through right now. But the Ravens still plan on trying to put fans in the stands at some point this season. I don't see it, but I see in January with a playoff game, that's where I think you may see a little bit more fervor in terms of getting fans into the stand. So we'll see. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so Marylanders, keep doing your job. We got to push this curve down.
Positivity rate down. Yes.
That's right. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is the coaching staff in particular here. But before I do, I want to mention one thing that I just remembered that I wanted to bring up. I think this game, you can't – Chris Webber talked about when Charles Barkley came and he was a high school kid and he saw what an NBA player looked like, he was able to vision it, right? We need to – I feel like this game is so important because you can't – like number 1 seed, not number 1 seed, this game is really important because if you can't see yourself beating the Chiefs, it doesn't matter if you got a bye. It doesn't matter if it's in the AFC Championship games. You obviously won't be in the Super Bowl. Wherever it is, if you can't see it, right, if you can't vision it, then you're never going to be able to achieve it. And so being able to see ourselves do it before we play them again in the playoffs is to me super important. But I want to talk about the coaches here. Mm-hmm. John Harbaugh is a disciple of Andy Reid, right? And however, I will say that their workout regimen, both personally and their team regimen is much different.
Oh man!
No, the taco bar. Come on, Andy.
That's not right, Jimbo.
No, I'm talking about his players. I'm talking about his players.
John had the ice cream truck coming to our training camp. Okay, so they can have a taco bar.
And Andy Reid and Doug Peterson do it every day after practice. Ice cream, post-practice ice cream for the team.
Well, we can tell that it impacts Andy Reid the most, but maybe the visor will keep things from getting into his mouth. Maybe the visor will protect him.
I love Andy Reid. And in fact, of course.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
But I'm just anyway. So this is my question: is it possible, since he is the pupil of Andy Reid, while not being an exact carbon copy, does Andy Reid have Harbaugh's number? Tony, what do you think?
Well, it appears so. If you look at the last couple of meetings, I would say that Andy Reid, his coaching style is this year. It's a little bit different because he normally doesn't run the football. Now he's doing a lot more of that. But I don't feel like that he owns Harms. I just feel that Andy Reid has a very good team around him now. He took the Eagles to 4 consecutive NFC divisional or championship games. And I mean, he was successful there with Philly, but couldn't get over the hump, if you will, to win the big game. Andy Reid knows that John is his pupil and he's going to do whatever it takes to beat him. And I think Harbs understands that. And I think it's time now for maybe to take the monkey off of the back of Harbs. And now maybe this might be his chance. But yeah, I think there's some sort of, they're well respected, they're friends, but I think this is going to be a competition in their minds to say, I'm the teacher, he's the pupil. This is what Andy Reid's saying. I'm going to beat him for the 3rd consecutive time now. I think it's there.
Well, let's hope not.
I hope not. Of course,
Yeah, I certainly hope not. Well, Jimmy, let me ask you something, because we have two interesting matchups here with the quarterbacks and the coaches. So are these already two Hall of Fame coaches? And what about the quarterbacks? Are we looking at already two Hall of Fame quarterbacks, or what do we got here?
I love it. I love it. I love it. I tell you what, I'm all four of them. Hall of Fame. Book it right now.
Oh, wow. All right.
Glenn, well, this isn't as much of a reach as some of the other prophecies I've made, but you know how I am with my prophecy accuracies. All right,
right.
so you can book it. I think that Lamar Jackson and look, Patrick Mahomes couldn't play another game. People laud
He
over
probably
him.
already is a Hall of Famer.
It's
Yeah,
insane. It's
he
insane
has a yellow
to
jacket
me.
already fitted at this
Yeah,
point,
it's insane to me
yeah.
that you know that people automatically assume. It's funny because people will talk to me and their assumption is my default position is that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. And it just makes me laugh because I see Lamar Jackson very often. But anyway, the view of Patrick Mahomes is such that he's already a Hall of Famer. Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, absolutely. I mean, I think John's going to be Glenn. I think you reinforce this in me is that I think he's going to be a Ravens lifer unless the wheels fall off. And I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame. And I think Lamar the same, because Lamar is one of those guys that is like a Steph Curry or an Allen Iverson, where he completely changed the landscape of the game. Like, not only is he incredible, but he's changed the trajectory of the game. Kids coming up look different now, play different now because of Lamar Jackson. And that can't be said of other guys. It just can't.
And the interesting part about Harbs is, if you remember 2 years ago when they were 4-5 in 2018, there was consideration of him being let go. And that would have may have ended his legacy. What did he do? He said, you know what? I'm going down with a fight. If anything, I'm going to now make a significant change to what we're doing. And that's when we saw Lamar. And you can kind of say Lamar sort of revived his coaching career to a certain degree. I don't know if Harbs would have been a Hall of Famer. Maybe at that moment, maybe. He has a Super Bowl ring. Yes, but I think that was a turning point in his coaching career, because if you remember, guys, he was supposed to get fired at the end of that season. It was supposed to be a mutual parting of ways, if you will. It didn't happen, and now look where he is now, one of the top coaches in the league, or considered one of the top 3 or 4 now. And so I would agree with you guys. I think all 4 of these guys, Hall of Famers, soon-to-be's, of course, and there's no question about that. Andy Reid has a long-standing history as a head coach. No question about that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's cemented there. But I want to get into now, we talked about some team stats. Lamar doesn't want it to be a Jackson-Mahomes matchup, but heck, we're in the media. So this is what we're going to do. All right, we're going to talk about Lamar Mahomes. Now, Glenn, I want you to state your stance a little bit about Mahomes right now, what you see going on. Give us a little bit of stats, because I think you have some interesting insight, and you started a little bit of thinking in my mind as well.
Well, I think that to kind of, I guess, expand on the fact that you're right. I think the consensus is that Pat Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, and some have different people at 2, 3, and 4, but pretty much every list has Mahomes at number 1. And so here are a couple of my questions. Right now he's 22nd in the league in completion percentage at 64.6, and his passer rating is 104. Now, I look at Lamar, on the other hand, he's second in the league in completion percentage at 77.6, and his passer rating is 134.6. Now, both are still doing phenomenal as far as touchdown to interception ratio, where Mahomes is at 5-0 and Lamar is at 4-0. But then Lamar obviously has the edge in rushing yards by 45 yards. So I just don't think it's as cut and dry and as simple as everyone thinks that Mahomes is. While he's a phenomenal talent and has the resume to where it's hard to argue, I just don't think it's as cut and dry as he is by far the best. To me, I'm seeing a lot of – oh, man, I'm going to get killed for this. Oh my goodness.
Be careful.
All I'm saying is that we haven't – I haven't been blown away by his performances. I thought he was rusty against Houston, and I thought he missed a lot of throws against the Chargers. Now, he made a lot of highlight reel plays. That throw to Ty Hill on the run outside the pocket was phenomenal.
At 19, he ran for 20 yards, and
yeah. I mean, he had a lot of highlight reels. But all I'm saying is that I'm not ready to call the guy who's 22nd in the league in completion and 12th in passer rating the hands down greatest quarterback just yet. Especially when you consider he hasn't necessarily played. It's not like he's we'll see what happens this game. He's playing a darn good team this week, and we'll see what happens. What are your guys' thoughts on that matchup?
Well, I would say this. I would say Patrick Mahomes right now certainly has proven himself and is now going into his fourth year with a Super Bowl ring, an MVP. With his rookie year, he threw for 50 touchdown passes, came out just like Lamar has come out basically, and really just changed the game. And, I would say right now, the only reason why I would give Patrick Mahomes a slight edge is because of the fact we're talking about greatest versus the most talented. I would say Mahomes right now probably – I don't necessarily think he's more talented than Lamar per se. I think Lamar can make the same type of throws that Patrick Mahomes can make. I think what Lamar needs to do now is to win these big games. So coming up this Monday night in playoffs, win those big games to solidify himself as that top guy. Now, we know about other quarterbacks in the league, too, that are having great years. Josh up in Buffalo. Aaron Rodgers still doing Aaron Rodgers things. Russell Wilson, of course. So there's a lot of – right. Well, there's a –
Hey, he's balling out. Cam Newton's balling out right now.
Yes, yeah, okay. But
Tony's not buying into it yet.
We can talk about Cam off the record. But I will tell you, though, to your point, Glenn, I don't necessarily think, Mahomes is not starting off the way that you would expect him to start off, but maybe it's that Super Bowl type of hangover, and the bullseye is on him right now. So I would say to you right now, I would still put Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson as those two guys right now that are in that status, maybe along with Aaron and Russell. Those four guys are probably within the same bunch, and then everybody else kind of falls below that. So that's where I stand with it. But I do hear your point.
I made this reference, but before the show, I think right now, Patrick Mahomes, just like Rocky and Rocky 3, is driving around with a nice tan. He's taking the photo shoots. He's got the leather jacket with the leopard on the back, and he's got the new house.
Adrian. Yeah.
Exactly, all of it. And I think Lamar, like Clubber Lang, is doing chin-ups in the pipes, down in the basement, right? And he's just getting ready every single time, right? So I think that there's a little bit of civilization that is going on in Patrick's life. He's engaged and all these other things, $500 million man. It's hard to stay hungry when you have no needs. It's just hard. I just think
that's a great
very
point.
few
that's
people.
a great point.
You got to start creating narratives. And Michael Jordan, people talk about him being the pettiest person on earth, but that's what made him the greatest player on earth. He was so petty. And not everybody has that. Not everybody has it. Not saying that Patrick isn't great, but you got to have some of that sharkness, that pettiness in you to keep going. So I'm interested to see what'll happen between that battle. Of course, I'm not going to give my prediction yet, but I think you can get the guess which way I'm leaning. But I want to stay on these quarterbacks. And one more question. We talked about the impact it could have on the Ravens. Tony, what I want to know is what sort of psychological impact could losing this game have on Lamar Jackson if he goes 0-3 against the Chiefs, him specifically?
Yeah, he may not tell you this. He may come out of this game. If it's a loss, of course, he may come out of this game saying, well, I'm looking forward to the next game. It was a tough loss. I'm mad at myself. I made mistakes, but we're going to move on. But I think, between me and him, if we were having a conversation, he would be very upset about this loss because this is the third time now he would lose to this same quarterback. And I know he's not competing against Mahomes, but let's say the third time against the same team. This is the team that's been in their way over the last couple of years. This is the team when he went 7-1. His first year, this is a team that he lost to. Last year, this was a team that he felt like we still could have won, even though we were down early. Now they're the champions. Now they're the darling of the league, the Kansas City Chiefs. It's my turn now to show who I am. He's very humble, though. We understand that, and he's MVP, reigning. But I think to me, this would have a large effect on him because they won't see this team again until the playoffs. And I think that's just a long wait for that to happen, to get his revenge again. So I think this will have a significant psychological edge, but it's up to the coaching staff to kind of keep him grounded and say, look, we still got to win one game at a time. The next game is the Washington football team. We've got to get ready for them. So I think it will have a devastating, not devastating, but it would have a very adverse effect initially on Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and I agree with you, John. I think right now we talked about before the season started, Jimmy, that no matter what they do in the regular season, it really doesn't matter anymore because the Ravens have shown that they're a great regular season team. So to me, they're not going to shut up any of their doubters until the postseason starts. So he's already going to hit the postseason with way more pressure because, like, all right, now it's time to go. But now if you add on top of that pressure, the pressure of beating a team that you've shown you can't do so far, a guy in Pat Mahomes who's the Super Bowl MVP, now you add that pressure on top of it. So not only is this, wow, it's a player performance, now I got to go up against Pat Mahomes, these guys I've never beaten before. I think it would just it would be a big effect psychologically on them, even if they want to go on to become the number 1 overall seed. You know, maybe the Chiefs slide a couple down and they end up taking over. I still think even if that game's in Baltimore, they would have the psychological advantage coming into it.
Mm-hmm. No,
and that
I'm
worries
with
me.
you.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question, Jimmy, because the only way to slow down Pat Mahomes is going to be to get to him. To let's see this pass rush. So how do they get to Pat Mahomes? And is it, as Tony mentioned before the show, the Chargers use a lot of 4-man rushes because they have the personnel to do so. I don't know if the Ravens do. So how do they get to Pat?
Yeah, I think there's a couple guys that have come on that we should focus on. Of course, the free agent acquisition of Calais Campbell, the consistency by which he can bring pressure is going to be important in this game. It's important in every game, but really important. But the other names that I think are important to remember when we're dialing up pressure are Tyus Bowser has come along this year. I think he's made some significant progression. And then also our rookie, Patrick Queen coming out of there. And like you said, Glenn, he is a blur. When he's coming in, filling in those blitzes up the middle, and he looks good. And those are things that we didn't have last year. Those are 3 new factors that Patrick Mahomes has to account for that he didn't have to account for last year. Now, you could say we had some other things, but I think that those 3 things are more important than whatever we had going in the pass rush last year. So I think that that's how we do it. It's funny because to me, it's nothing more than, Wink can dial it up, but he dialed it up last year and we did some cover 0 stuff and things like that, but we've got to win our matchups. We've got to win our matchups. And I think that we have the horses to do it this year. I feel more confident in those guys. And the other thing too, our $17 million man's got to come on. Judon,
Yes,
where you at? What's going on? Body built by
goodness.
Taco Bell. Maybe he needs to be body built by something else. I don't know. But you got to come on there, man. I don't know what's going on with Mr. Judon. Maybe it's pressure in his mind because he knows there's so much on the line for him every single game as far as his long-term money goes. I don't know, but this is it, man.
Yeah, Tony, let me ask you some, because we normally see the Ravens blitz heavy and lean on their secondary. Can they afford to keep that strategy, blitz heavy, to get to Pat Mahomes and leave those corners one-on-one with these great skill position players?
Well, I think one of the aspects of this defense that they have this year that they didn't have in the past was, of course, the addition of Marcus Peters. He didn't play in these last 2 games against the Chiefs. And I do agree with you, Jimmy, to a standpoint of now we need to see Judon make that next step and get to that quarterback and sack him and make that play. And Tyus Bowser under that contract year should also bring the pressure. But I think what's going to help, and we'll talk about this later with Calais Campbell in the middle, he's going to now surge a huge push, especially on that right side of that offensive line that the Chiefs have. Their left side is solid. I'm really concerned about Eric Fisher and
Kalechi.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he used to play for us. Exactly.
KO,
Those
man.
2 guys are really good, but I think that Calais can make a nice push up the middle that can help Judon and help Bowser and help, I don't want to call him Sack Daddy yet because I haven't seen much of him, but
Snack
Jalen.
Daddy.
Snack Daddy is more like it. You'll see a lot more pressure on the outside from these guys. So, again, to your point, I think we don't have to do a 4-man rush like the Chargers, but I think we can still put pressure as long as we can collapse that middle with Derek Wolfe. Well, with Brandon Williams. I keep forgetting about Brandon. For some reason, I forget about Brandon. He's
having a heck of a year.
And he's having a heck of a year, right. The Monstars in the middle. I think with Brandon and Calais and Wolfe, they've got to get that interior penetration to allow those linebackers now to get free and loose and to not only pressure Mahomes, but also get him down the ground, which is what we need to see more of.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn, you're talking about when you get there, you got to finish the job. And Tony, you mentioned that as well. And I think I think Patrick Queen has the ability to do that, where I don't know how many other inside linebackers can come in with that same speed and kind of catch that quarterback off guard, right? Where a lot of quarterbacks think, all right, I know I got a big guy coming at me. I can sidestep him. I can do this. I can do that. But Queen is he's so fast. He's Lightning McQueen when he comes in on those blitzes, and so it's definitely something to keep an eye on. All right, Tony. So we got to ask you this though, because you are the resident expert when it comes to being at M&T Bank Stadium, the palpable, environment that is being at M&T Bank. It's just awesome. A great. I know that Glenn has some great memories there, as do I. But being a season ticket holder, how big of a deal is it that it will be a fanless stadium, an empty stadium for this game? How much of an advantage are we giving up?
Yeah, I think it's huge, to be quite honest with you. And, keep in mind with and I'm a tailgater, so I'm there. If it's a Monday night game that starts at 9 or 8:30, I'm there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The fans are coming around. Ravens Walk is live. Music is playing. You see the band coming down Ravens Walk. It's just it's like an electric type of atmosphere. And then once the introductions for the players, the offense, the defense, whichever side it's going to be on, the fans get excited. You see the fans stand up. It gets dark. You see the light. Everything it's Monday Night Football. And the decibel level, over 100. Now it's going to be no fans. And it's going to be the cutouts. And it's going to be 70 decibels, which is not that loud. It's the sound of a roaring car. Who knows? It's just not the same. And I got to be honest with you. It's disappointing to a certain degree that we couldn't, get in this kind of game and no fans. But I do understand health is important. Safety is important. But for goodness sake, we got a Monday night game finally with a top-notch team, and we can't be there at home. It pains me.
Oh, the NFL's got to whatever happens, they got to give us a run back next year.
Yeah.
Whatever happens.
Yeah, give us another Monday nighter next year, for goodness sake.
All
right, so Jimmy, I wanted to get into some players to look at, some things to look out for, some star players on their end. So we're going to start on the defensive side of the ball. Why don't you give me some defensive stars we should be looking out for?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier Chris Jones and Frank Clark, but one of the other two names I want to talk about in the secondary, Honey Badger and L'Jarius Sneed. Honey Badger as a Tyrann Mathieu, if you guys live under a rock and didn't know that was his nickname. But I think that those are two names that we need to be looking out for. L'Jarius Sneed, is it Jadarius? Did I say that right? L'Jarius. Sorry about that. L'Jarius Sneed. He seems to be a guy that is in the right place at the right time, kind of creates his own luck on these 2 interceptions he's had this year. But that comes from preparation and hard work. I mean, guys ended up being lucky a lot of the times. It's not just luck, right? So keep an eye out for him, seeing if he'll follow Hollywood around or if he'll stay true to one side. And I'll talk about Hollywood a little bit later because I'm excited for this game. But also Tyrann Mathieu, seeing where he's at, how close he is, if he's up on the box, if he's helping out in the run game, I'm sure naturally he'll be doing that. But also he's a rangy guy, very instinctual guy. And I say we give him a couple servings of Gus Edwards face mask a couple times just to kind of exactly.
That's right.
Just to kind of temper him down a little bit. But what other names? So those are a couple names I got on defense. Are there any other names, Tony, you think I'm missing on the defensive end as far as the Chiefs go?
No, we talked about Chris Jones and Frank Clark. We know that Chris Jones is probably the second best defensive tackle in the league behind Mr. Aaron Donald. And he is very good, and he can get the penetration that you need. Frank Clark is so fast, and I know, Glenn, you mentioned this before the show, how quick he is so quick off the ball that he's certainly going to give the tackles a very challenging time. And that's when Orlando Brown is going to have to stay, keep his feet set. And he moves around too just a bit. So you're going to have to keep your feet set as a tackle to make sure that he doesn't get around you and do all the moves. But those are the two guys that I'll be looking at that defensive line very close to see what kind of pressure they give on these tackles, especially those two guys.
Yeah, that could be a problem. When I saw Frank Clark's get off just in that Houston game, my goodness, he is fast around that edge.
He called me up and he was like, "Man, that makes me think of you on the TV, man."
Yeah, exactly.
But what about Taco Charlton? I mean, he's a newcomer, high draft pick, a guy that didn't work out in Dallas. Another guy I think we should keep our eye on. But the other one too is Mike Pennell. Glenn, how important is Mike Pennell to that defense?
Yeah, a guy that I kind of compare him to like DJ Reader last year for Houston, a guy that got none of the pub, but just was probably their best defensive lineman. He is incredible. He's great at what he does great, which is stop the run, which, I think if they could have drawn it up, this is the one game that you want to have Mike Pennell. So it's good for them that they got him back because we know that the Ravens want to run the ball and that's what they do best. So getting Pennell back is going to be problems. And then when you put him next to guys you just mentioned with Chris Jones and Taco Charlton, it elevates their game as well to another level. So it helps all of them getting Mike back. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, what about, it's easy to say on the offensive side of the ball, so I'm going to strike out a couple names here. We already talked about Pat, Ty Hill, Travis Kelce. Are there any names that I'm missing here, Tony, as far as the offense side of the ball? One name, and you might mention this, comes to my mind, is Robinson, the wide receiver. I think that him and Mahomes have a pretty special connection. But are there any other names here as far as their offensive weapons that we should look out for?
Well, McCole Hardman is certainly a guy. I think he's the second fastest receiver behind Tyreek Hill. And remember, he burnt us a few times last year in the game. He was really getting loose. And that's where I think is going to be critical, where we need to make sure that we put a helmet-to-helmet on both Hardman and Hill. That's going to be critical in this game. Robinson is not necessarily a speedster, but he's a really good hands guy. So I would say McCole would probably be the guy that I would look at on the offensive side as well. I'm kind of scared of him as well as Hill, of course.
All right, well, this is the most exciting part of the show. I'm really excited to get into it. Hopefully you guys are as excited as we are. We're going to get into our big game predictions, one guy on offense, one guy on defense, and each one of us is going to give you our scores. So we're going to go down here in order. Glenn, I'm going to let you go first, and then I'll go. And Tony, we will save the best for last and allow you to bring us home. Yep. So Glenn, kick us off. Who is your offensive big game breakout player for this game?
Yeah, I got to go Dobbins here. I think it was odd last week to see him only get 3 touches, 2 of which were huge, but it's almost like they were hiding him for something. So look for him to break out this week. I see him going well over 100 yards and getting in the end zone.
Wow.
Yeah, I think he does it from both sides. I think he does it in the air and on the ground. I think we finally get him a little bit more in space and get him involved in the passing game, which is something we haven't seen yet. Outside that 113-yard catch, which was huge last week. And then on the other side of the ball, I think Bowser continues to stack good games. That's what Wink Martindale said about Bowser. He had a great week 1, but the thing about it, he got to stack them. You got to keep putting them together. And he did it last week. He got another sack last week, and I think he gets a strip sack on Pat Mahomes.
Wow.
And possibly is the turning point of the game. We know how big turnovers are. Neither team likes to commit them. So I think Bowser gets a huge strip sack and turns the tide in this one. And then my score. Should we say the score now?
Yeah. Keep going all the way through. You're feeling it.
Well, it's hard to blow out a team like the Chiefs, and I do think that the Ravens, like a lot of other teams, I think they jump out to a decent lead, and I think outside of or opposite of what those other teams do, they hold on for the win. I think that there's no team that holds on to leads better than the Ravens, and I think they do it this week. I think they get the win 27-20.
Wow. All right. So before I give my predictions, I just want to say one thing. How saddened was Justice Hill watching J.K. Dobbins in that last game? Catch it, break a tackle, in space, do everything that Justice was brought to this team to do.
I know.
He had to think, all right.
And then Duvernay with the returns. He's I guess I'm not kick returning this year.
And Gus is just averaging 7 a carry, so it's like, geez whiz. All right, so my predictions. Offensive big game prediction. Hollywood is going to have a career game. 7 catches, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
I'm going to put him on my fantasy team right now.
Yes, he's gonna ball out this week. I can just feel
off the
it.
Bench.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Good.
I think that they're worried sick about how they're gonna defend Hollywood Brown. And Tony, I'm sure that you saw the show as well. I think that a lot of people are still underestimating his speed while they think about it and talk about it. There are some strength and conditioning coaches out there who think that he could beat Ty Hill in a race, and we've had him on our show. Just saying. As far as defense, Marcus Peters, I mentioned this before. He went off against the Rams. Hasn't gotten a chance to play these guys in a Ravens uniform yet. Last year when he played against the Rams, he had a heck of a game. I think it is the same thing. I think it's an interception, not just interception. I think he's taking it to the house.
Wow. That would be huge. I would be going nuts.
Just like Seattle. Remember that?
Hell yeah. I don't live close to my neighbors, but they'd be hearing me that day.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, this is my score of the game. I think I have maybe we all have a pretty wide margin, wider than I thought it would be. 31-24 is my score.
Okay.
Baltimore Ravens are gonna bring it home, put the Chiefs in the corner, and live on to be 3-0. All right, so Tony, all you.
Tell you what, I like the Peters prediction, quite frankly. Again, he's juice man. But let's talk about the big game prediction for offense. And, because of the possession factor here, I think Lamar Jackson, this is a very important game for him. And whenever they're down at the goal line or close to it, he wants to run the ball in. They're going to call plays for him, specifically to run the ball, score the touchdown, make it happen. We're not going to waste any time trying to get it to receivers or the Mark Andrews. You make it happen. 3 rushing touchdowns for Lamar Jackson on Monday Night Football. He wants this so badly. So that's what I predict there. That's my big game prediction. Big game prediction on defense. Calais Campbell is motivated. He needs 10 sacks or 10 and a half sacks rather to get to 200 sacks for his career. We talked about that last week.
Sacks.
Is it 100? I'm sorry, 100, probably 200. 200 would be, yeah.
That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. 100. Thank you for correcting me. 100 sacks. 200 sacks is ridiculous. 100 sacks. He mentioned this on the sideline with Ingram, and Ingram said to him, I'm going to continue to motivate you to get to that number. And I think he's going to penetrate, get 2 sacks on Mahomes in the middle. Mahomes is going to be kind of darting around. 2 sacks by Calais Campbell. Final score, because of I don't necessarily think it's going to be a high-scoring game as I think people would like to see. I think it's going to be a fill-em-out game. It may be a 3-0 game at the end of the first quarter. That's how low-scoring it might be initially. But I still see the Ravens 27-21. I upped it just a bit recently because I said it was 24-21. But I think 27-21 Ravens. Lamar Jackson, 3 rushing touchdowns on his own.
That's awesome. Well, one thing I want to note here is that, so Glenn, you have a 7-point discrepancy. I as well, if my math is right, have a 7-point difference in this game. And Tony has a 6. So very close, all 3 of us, as far as our point differential and margin of victory here. So it's going to be a really interesting game. I cannot wait for this game. I'm sure that Tony and Glenn, you feel exactly the same.
Such a long wait, though, man. I love Monday night games, but Tony, let me get your take on that. I like Monday night games because of the national attention, but man, my favorite 1:00 on Sunday. What's your thoughts?
1:00 Sunday is perfect because I'm getting up early on a Sunday morning with my coffee, watching my pregame shows. I'm ready to start playing at 1:00. The 4:35 or the 4:25 game last week, it hurt me. It hurt me against Houston. I really wanted that game to be 1:00. So yeah, I agree with you. Monday night's going to be a long wait.
That's funny because I'm a Sunday night guy. I love the Sunday night game. You're seeing the 1:00 game, the 4:25 game, and especially if your fantasy team is doing well. And then the Ravens are about to stomp somebody at 8:00 on a Sunday night. You go into the week happy, you show up to work in your Ravens gear and everything else. So
What do you know about going into work, Jimmy? You've been working at home for
true,
years now. What do you know about going into work?
I wear my Ravens gear into work virtually on the Zoom calls.
Virtually, yeah.
That's right. So I'm really excited for this game. Make sure you guys give us your comments. Give us your score predictions. Let us know what your thoughts are. Make sure you leave your comments and likes, and we love interacting with you guys. Also, if you want an opportunity to come on the show, like I mentioned in the beginning, Tony's one of our patrons, and we're really appreciative of that. And you guys have that opportunity as well. So go ahead and check out our Patreon and the link in the description below. But before we go, Tony, we want to allow you the opportunity to plug and let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Listen, I love you guys, number one. This has been great. You can find me on some of the local radio stations here, 92Q, Magic 95.9. I do news, traffic, and weather. And some stations down in Washington, I do traffic, weather, and news for a living. It's fun, but I enjoy it. It's an easy living, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.